Welcome to the Roundtable, a new media series under the Overseas Ministry Study Center. My name is Stephen Di Trolio, and in this show, we interview scholars and students of world Christianity and mission studies. Welcome, Dr. Ryan Ramsey.
Glad to be here, Stephen.
It's a pleasure to have you today. Our first question is, we'd love for you to share about your academic training. Where did you do your PhD, in what field, and maybe why the PhD?
Yeah, so I just finished my PhD last year at Baylor University within the religion department at Baylor, and within the religion department, the historical studies area, which houses most of the world Christianity students at Baylor. I kind of came to Baylor and world Christianity even in kind of a roundabout way, from studying theology to really getting into history and finding a lot of joy and enjoyment just working with historical sources. And they were kind of asking the theological questions that I wanted to ask, and the historical questions that the things that I really cared about. I realized in my theological journey my journey in theological education that world Christianity had the questions that I wanted to ask.
And what was your PhD on?
So I wrote a dissertation on Teresa Urrea, who is known as La Santa de Cabora, the Saint of Cabora. She was a 19th and early 20th century folk saint in Mexico and the borderlands. She was a religious exile in the United States for much of her life because she was healing indigenous and poor people and kind of being an apparition of the Virgin in a sense to them. She was also involved with Spiritism, but she really upset the powers that be in Mexico at the time, Porfirio Diaz, and she was exiled to the U.S., where she lived the last decade of her life basically going from city to city, oftentimes healing, and continuing that healing practice in the United States. And so my work on her is I call it like a micro-historical biography.
Yeah.
So
fascinating. Where do you work? Where do you teach? Where do you do research now?
Right now, I am the visiting assistant professor of history and world Christianity at Pittsburgh Theological Seminary. I'm also a Louisville Institute postdoc fellow. Yes, and that's where I teach and research and write, and it's a wonderful community, a wonderful place.
Would you mind sharing some of the courses that you've taught or institutional projects that maybe you've been involved with your current institution?
Yeah, so I've gotten the opportunity to teach just a world Christianity course at PTS, Pittsburgh, and largely that course has been Christianity in the Global South. Not that that's always what world Christianity is limited to, but seeing that's where it comes from. That's oftentimes what I'm giving my students. I'm also teaching kind of a missiological course right now that's required for our MDiv students. It's a good learning skills and kind of basic ethnography and historical skills to do kind of pastoral congregational studies. I've also taught a worship class that was largely historical, looking at worship in Christian history, as well as in more contemporary world Christian context. So I used articles from studies in world Christianity for that, as well as decolonial Christianity is a volume I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah.
And then I've got a lot of kind of ongoing projects with students from who are writing theses on as far ranging as Chinese Christian house churches to Enrique Dussel.
Sure.
So
the whole gamut.
Yes.
Could you share something about a recent publication or book that you're working on, and what methodology did you employ, and what were some of the big takeaways from that research?
Yeah. So
you just finished your dissertation.
Yes, I just finished my dissertation, and I sent that out for review right now.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to that, but it's nice to have a little breathing room to work on other projects. But a piece that came out last year that I was very excited about was an essay called Curanderismo in World Christianity in the Journal for Ecumenical Studies, and it basically explores kind of these these kind of ambiguous borderlands between, if you're not familiar with curanderismo, you could look it up and get the sense of the way
folk healing.
Yeah, folk healing. That's a good way.
Folk practices.
Yeah, it's oftentimes, you might call it syncretistic or something like that. It's using lots of different religious things. And a lot of my research is just following these like ways in which it is a very Christian thing, oftentimes, for many of these people. And so you can, so I'm excited about that piece, and I think I've heard, some people in curanderismo really appreciated it. So that was really good.
What was one of the big takeaways from that?
The big takeaway, that curanderismo is a part of world Christianity for many of these people, and it follows a lot of the same kind of cross-cultural movements and shifts and changes that you see elsewhere in world Christianity, and kind of the indigenization of the religion into context, the shifts through migration.
Sure.
So that's kind of the takeaway.
So we talked a little bit about what you were working on in sort of recently, but I would love to hear what's on the horizon next for your research. What sort of context or subject or methodology you hope to employ?
Yeah, so a couple things. First, I hope to continue an avenue that I began exploring through my dissertation. And as part of that is the history of Yaqui Christianity. The Yaquis are an indigenous group in northern Mexico and Sonora, and as well as in Arizona in the United States. And so they have a very, very rich Christian tradition, largely forged in resistance against the Spanish colonial government as well as the Mexican state. And so, but obviously these things are very complicated.
Sure.
And there's not really there's some good research on them anthropologically and historically. And what I would like to do is I'd like to kind of present them as world Christianity, as an example of the way that Christianity indigenizes into a culture, the way that it resists other forms of Christianity, in particular colonial Christianities that are kind of coming up against it. So that's one thing. And then I also hope to get started soon on a kind of a history of emotions project in Pentecostalism. Okay. So looking at Pentecostal missionaries, Native missionaries, Cole Porters. I've done some research, and hopeful to explore the ways that their emotions actually shaped how they did what they did. Sure. Their practices, their theologies, and things like that. So
fascinating. Kind of shifting gears here, but would you mind sharing your thoughts about the state of the field? How do you see it moving forward? And what are some of the challenges you might have faced as a scholar of world Christianity as you've done your research?
Those are good questions, and two different questions.
Yeah. One at a time.
I'll start with the first one. I think the field is in a really healthy place. I still talk to people who are, especially when in the North American context, there's a lot of there's a real sense in which, we're losing Christians. The churches are dead, the church is dying, and in one sense, yes, that's true. But in another sense, Christianity is growing, and I think there's a real opportunity in theological education and religious studies to begin to shift resources towards the global south, where Christianity is growing. Sure. And world Christianity is a piece of bringing this into the discourse. And so I think increasingly that's being recognized, and more places, and I'm thinking particularly in the North American contexts, are beginning to recognize this reality and hire people who are doing the history of Christianity or studies of Christianity in this way. So I'm hopeful in a few years we might even see, seminary, divinity school students, Christian college students, even state school students who come out of their history classes with a really capacious understanding of what Christianity is. That's not so myopic on, a very particular kind of Christendom narrative that has been taught.
And what do you see is, maybe not just for yourself, but maybe for yourself, for challenges in the field of world Christianity?
Yeah, I think we're related to that, and and this will be broader, and I'll speak about myself, but I think part of that is like, how do you actually make those connections with the global South?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you do it in ways that can share resources in non-colonizing ways, in ways that are actually helpful to people, and listening to a variety of voices and actually taking them seriously, because these are complex power relations. And I think, for myself, it's, this constant need to articulate what we do in world Christianity. Because, for instance, at the conference, and the World Christianity Conference, you see folks that come from a variety of different contexts and fields. You've got historians and theologians and pastors and social scientists. And how do you, and that's the beauty of world Christianity, is you have people doing all these different things, using all these different methodologies. But that doesn't fit in the boxes for registrars and academic offices. Sure. And there's kind of an inscrutability of world Christianity within the academy. So I think there's a real challenge of articulating what it is we do. Yeah. And I think that's part of my goal in my current institution, is trying to, what do I
advocate
do?
For that.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about the future, talked about some challenges. Is there topics or research that you feel or focuses that you feel are missing in the study of world Christianity or mission studies?
Yeah, I think, and this is something that was fairly new to me in my research, but it's been explored by other people. My doctoral advisor, Carlos Cordoza-Rolandi, is one, but others as well, is Christianity's engagement with metaphysical religions. And I think this is an incredibly difficult subject on a couple lines.
Sorry, what do you mean by metaphysical religion?
Of course, yes. Spiritism, spiritualism, theosophy. These kinds of religions that they're not recognized as Christian. They're also not necessarily recognized as indigenous. And I think that kind of makes this polarity very difficult, because in one sense, I think, if we want to look at Christianity in some sort of like orthodox way, whatever that may mean to whoever's studying it, it's hard to study spiritists. It's hard to study theosophists as like representations of Christianity and the way that they're engaging with it. On the other hand, these are not purely like indigenous religions. I think world Christianity is very excited to work with indigenous religions, or for instance, a world religion such as Buddhism. I think but these are religions that have been like constituted in modernity using lots of different sources, and there's a messiness to it that I think oftentimes it's difficult for us to navigate as scholars. So I'm excited about the possibility of that work going on in this field, just trying to make sense of it, and not necessarily as a way of not necessarily as a way of affirming it or something like that. Maybe not, but as a way of recognizing that Christians, for the last couple hundred years at least, have been locked in these complex worlds of like navigating these social things. And I think it has a lot of bearing on today. I mean, even thinking about some of the people in my research I've talked to that like, whether it's, Catholicism, kind of New Age religion, blend together in these ways. And I think we're doing them a disservice, and we're being dishonest if we're not like recognizing those complex realities that they're living.
Excellent.
So
this is sort of an impromptu question. Last question, and you'll complete the sentence for me. World Christianity is?
World Christianity is a community.
Okay.
We cannot do it alone. None of us are alone in this, and that's part of what makes it a beautiful field, is that no one of us can be a master of it.
Excellent. Well, thank you for coming on to the OMSC Roundtable. I appreciate it, Dr. Ramsey. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephen.